Hi guys, welcome to Learn Electronics Repair. I have a box full of junk here, basically. Some is stuff I've just been given, some are things that I got from the car boot sale and I can't repair or not really worth repairing. So I need to make some space, and the best thing to do with this is not to just take it all to the skip, but to take off all the most interesting things you want to keep and then take it all to the skip. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of salvage today. We've done it before, but it's good fun, yeah? So I think there's some motherboards, graphics cards, power supplies and other stuff in here. Let's have a look through, let's see what we can get from this, and then the rest of it can go, okay? Of course, what you want to salvage will depend mainly on three factors. One is whatever it is that you are repairing, or if you're a hobbyist, what sort of thing you're doing, okay? That suggests what will be of interest to you. Two is what have you already got? Plenty of already, maybe you don't really need more. And three will be how much of a hoarder are you? Okay, so that's the main factors. I suppose a fourth factor is how much time have you got spare? So we've got a couple motherboards first. We'll have a quick look at these. I do some motherboard repair and a lot of retro motherboards. These both have 40 PCH, so they're not fixable in any sort of reasonable way. This one also has some damage in the CPU socket as well, I think somewhere, or at least one of them does. So these are now just scrap. If you're getting a lot of motherboards of the same type, you may wish to keep these as donors. I don't really. I get a whole range of stuff, and I find for myself keeping them as donor boards just takes up too much space. Okay, so let's see. These kind of capacitors, polymer capacitors, I don't tend to salvage these. They're useful, but they're usually quite hard to get off the board, yeah. So I don't tend to salvage them. We'll have a go at one or two, but mostly I find they're not worth the bother. I like to have a few of the inductors. Inductors are useful, expensive to buy, and well worth keeping, although they don't tend to fail very often, I will say that. But maybe inductors. MOSFETs, I will normally think, if I can get them off the board and it's easy, I'll take the MOSFETs. And some connectors can be useful. So that's probably what I would want to unsolder from here, especially things like HDMI, which come in like a zillion different types, and you never seem to have the one you want, and they're not too difficult to unsolder with hot air. So those I would take from here, okay? So let's see what we can get from these. Mostly for this sort of thing, I will use hot air. But these capacitors, I try to remove them with a soldering iron. Another good reason for at least removing a few of these is because if you're going to take the MOSFETs off, you don't want these capacitors exploding, okay? So the ones that are the nearest to the MOSFETs will certainly try and get them, even if I don't actually end up keeping them. Though if they came off nicely, I probably will. Let's have a go. So I'll just get hold of this one. Yeah, I'm just rocking it very gently backwards and forwards. That actually came out very easily, but that's quite a large one, so it's easy to get a grip on that, okay? Yeah, those are coming off nicely, so those I will just put in my stash. Of course, the stash has to be well organised, otherwise, to be quite honest, it's pointless because you'll never find what you're looking for. You won't even know you've got what you're looking for. Okay. Another one. I'll see now if I can get the HDMI, and maybe these USB connectors, these double ones are useful. Because these are things that get broken a lot. That's why I like to take these connectors. That will probably be some sort of interface chip for the HDMI. Again, it's facing the outside world, so those things sometimes get damaged. This is a 310 motherboard, so it's not exactly very old, so it could be well worth having that. I think I'll take that off. There's another one there, DVI VGA, probably doing the same sort of thing. And then we'll have a look at these MOSFETs. I think those are going to be useful, okay? So let's just work on this area of the board. For this sort of salvage work, I find the most useful tools are a nice, sharp, pointed pair of tweezers and a pair of long-nosed pliers. The other thing I find useful, I've had this for years, it's the lid off an old satellite receiver. I've probably had it for 10 years now, I would think. And I can just put the board on here. It means I can heat all this up nicely. It's not going to waggle around and I'm not going to burn the workbench. If I was trying to do this on a repair job, I would try and add leaded solder and flux to this first, because I don't want to damage the PCB. When I'm salvaging parts, I'm really not interested in what happens to the PCB. I'm more worried about what might happen to the part. But it's not critical. If I don't get it off, it's not really a big loss. Yeah. So let's just warm this area up. It'll take a little while to get up the temperature, but then these will probably all come off in one go. Pretty much one after the other. We're nowhere near yet. I have the air set at 450, it's quite hot. Again, I'm not too worried about the PCB at all. And I'm trying to blow the air kind of that way, so I'm not blowing it into the connector. So this should help, hopefully, not to melt the internal part of the USB connectors, for example. Okay, can't say for certain because they're near the edge of the board, but we can only do our best. Okay, this one's going to come now. Just one point holding it on just here. Okay, see, that came off nicely. Just go for the others now while it's all hot in this area. Okay. Yeah, we'll look at it when it cools down. And while we're at it, let's see if we can just get the one with the Ethernet and USBs. You see, I'm just wedging the wires in there. The capacitor just fell out on its own. Okay, those are probably the most useful connectors. The VGA and the DVIs don't really tend to fail particularly. They don't tend to break, should I say. I mean, if you do want to unsolder these, you can do it by the same technique, it will work. And the last one. Might have to just wedge something under this one. Yeah. Okay. You want the audio connector? Same thing. Another Great thing about this, by the way, is it's a very good way to learn how to use your hot air station if you're new to them. If you just bought one, this is the first sort of thing you should be doing with it. It also gives you a good idea of the capabilities of the hot air station, what it can do, what it can't do. Okay. Seeing as this entire area of the board is now warm, it's the best time to unsolder the MOSFETs if you want them. And for example, this HDMI chip, these are much easier to do. Okay, I've got most of what I want off this one, then on a few of the MOSFETs. These might be useful again, depending if you're doing motherboard repair and you may be working on the same chipset. Once again, if you want to desolder these, they're not so difficult, just go around the edges. And generally with these, I pick them up from under one edge. This is also good practice to learn how to desolder without sliding the thing around and dislodging other components. Obviously here it doesn't matter, you see it's gone absolutely everywhere. So that one I made a pig zero, it's still here. Okay, what else might I want? I usually unsolder the BIOS chip as well because EPROMs are useful, basically. Nice big MOSFET here as well, may as well have that. Okay. Another thing I find worth having is the VRM controller IC, which is here. That one I took off nice and cleanly, which just goes to show that the practice is worth as much probably as the salvage components are to you. So although there were a lot of parts still on the board, that's basically what I wanted from it. So what do we have? Well, we have a whole load of MOSFETs, you can see here, or a 12, whatever the number, C89L. So we've got a lot of those. RA88. So these are high side and low side. They're different from each other. What I do with these, rather than throwing everything into one large tub and sorting it out later, if I take a bunch of MOSFETs like this off one board, I put them in a little anti-static bag. I don't bother to mark them up at this point. I just put them in an anti-static bag. And then I'll do the same with everything else I'm salvaging today. And then I know when I come to sort this out that pretty much that bag will have one or two types of MOSFET. If I don't do it this way, I just end up with hundreds of MOSFETs and then I have to sort them all out. Yeah, so this just saves quite a bit of time. If you want to, you can just write the numbers on there. I tend to look at that later. Just another MOSFET there by the looks of it. This is a BIOS chip, so this will be a 2.4 something or other, or 2.5, 25Q128. VRM controller, the VGA and DVI output chip, I think it was. Okay, and the one by the HDMI. I tend to put these all into one thing together and sort them out later. And this is the SIO. This is the one I made a mess of, but if we look at it, it's pretty clean. Couple of pins, got a bit of a solder bridge on there. Maybe a few other solder bridges. I wouldn't tend to sort this out now. I'll keep hold of it, so that'll go into its own little bag. We know the part number. If I decide I need that in the future, that is the time I will clean it up, okay? So the MOSFET can just go into a bag, and I'll put all similar shaped and sized ones together unless I have a whole batch of the same sort. Same with these chips, I'll just get them all together for now, sort them out later. The EEPROM can go in there. I then have a few capacitors, so again I'll just stick all polymer capacitors into one bag for the session today. Sort them out later. These are quite nice big ones. 270 16 volt. What's that one that fell out? Okay. 110 volt. And lastly, we have a load of connectors. So let's see how well these came off. This is the audio connector. No broken pins. It's not melted. It's not damaged. So you can see, even though I put a lot of heat into the PCB there, that came out just fine. Here's the LAN plus 2 USBs. Again, all the pins are there. Nothing broken, nothing melted. If they are, just throw them away now. Yeah, a bit of solder on, but that's nothing. You can soon desolder that if you want to. One touch and it's mostly gone. Bit of flux help with that, by the way. Look, now I've started messing with it. I need to do it, yeah. Gone against my own method there. Just tidy them up if and when I want to use them. It's done now. So again, they were soldered just fine. They're not melted or damaged. HDMI, always useful, these things. All the pins are intact. Nice and clean. And these are the ones I just really unsoldered just to show I can do it. So this is a VGA connector. I get quite a few boards with corroded connectors, so these are sort of useful to me. And the DVI, again, all the pins are nicely desoldered. So we have some very useful connectors there. And they can all go in one bag. I have one or two more motherboards here to salvage, so I'll do those. And then let's look at some other things we can unsolder, salvage. So I have plenty more MOSFETs, another EEPROM, a different style of HDMI, these are always worth having, and a different style of one of these. So this has 2 USB 3 connectors on plus the LAN, whereas the other one was like the USB 1 type plus the LAN. That's 4 on. Again, if you want to find these things because you have a broken one or something, they're not easy to find. And if you do, it will cost you a bit, yeah. I have a couple of old graphics cards here, obviously not complete. These are very good if you want to practice BGA rework, unsoldering and such like. Although your other option is to get some cheap, worthless graphics card and then effectively see if you can remove the BGA, which will be smaller, so it's easier, reball it and stick it back on and see if it's still working. So some effectively worthless old graphics card that has BGA is probably very good also for that. So these are basically for the bin really. I mean, we have the RAM on here, but it probably isn't a lot of use unless you want to fix graphics cards of the same era, and you probably don't. But once again, this is good practice. So normally to remove these sort of things you would use a preheater plus hot air. Well, here's a good opportunity to see how well that actually works without the preheater. And if anything, this might just teach us why we need to use a preheater for this sort of thing. So let's have a look to see if I can actually unsolder some of these without the preheater, okay? Well, the flux is bubbling away. There was a lot of flux on here already, so fair enough. This is also a good opportunity to practice this technique of tapping the chip when you resolder them. So you need to get used to how far you can do this. It will spring back into position. With something scrap like this, it doesn't matter. So again, if you're going to learn these techniques, this is the place to do it. Can we actually get a bit closer? So that's not moving at the moment. You see, without a preheater, I have to get a lot of heat into this before anything will happen at all. Yeah, see how difficult this is to do? Now it's coming. But what's actually is, it's just not unsoldered properly. You see that? It's kind of like flexing a little bit. This will just destroy the pads under it, basically. Yeah. You see that's lifting a little bit? So this is not how you want to remove these, okay? All these capacitors are loose, they're all floating around. Eventually it comes off. Well, that's actually hot. I mean, that board's very hot. Let's just see, out of interest, if we actually destroyed the RAM chip, because I think we actually lifted some of the pads clean off the chip there, let alone what we might have done to the board. Okay, take a bit of a leaded solder, form a nice ball of solder. Okay, other side, just hold it down a little bit. Well, actually, it looks to me like that pad actually came off the chip altogether in this corner. Okay, let's see. Yeah, you see some of them are not taking... Oh, it did take okay. I eat my words there. But this one here seems to be refusing to take any solder. There's solder on the tip. Yeah, you see it. So that is a bad pad, I would say, and that's because we were kind of like prizing this up in one corner. Okay, let's have a look at the board as well, out of interest. So let's see what happened to this. So again, put plenty of flux on it. Okay. Well, the board seems to have survived rather better. Let's get a bit of braid. Okay. It's best to cut a piece of braid like that so that you're not soaking heat up into the roll of braid. We need a little bit of solder on the actual tip, and then press down but not hard. It slipped off to one side, but it's okay. Let's do the same with the chip as well, particularly on this side. Right? It looks like it has some damage, like a pad is missing. Okay, so let's just do the same with this. Okay, and the same on this side. Okay, let's clean that up. Okay, so that's cleaned up now, and I think we can see that we have one damaged pad here. So this one here that's dark. That one. Now it may just be that there's no solder gone onto that, but it's more likely it's actually damaged. We can easily find that out actually. Put a bit of flux on there. A bit of solder and see if it will take some solder basically. Yeah. Will that take any solder? Well, yes, it did. So it was just there wasn't any solder on that pad, so that is okay. So the board actually survived that rather nasty attempt. And looking at the chip now, I think the chip did as well. Surprises me. I think that's just, yeah, that's just a bit of stray solder got onto there. I mean, there's no connection there, so it ain't that. Yeah, some of the pads are not flattened with a braid. So, surprisingly, actually, even without a preheater, I actually managed to do that. Whether or not that would survive, in reality, I don't know. Since we're just spending a little time learning techniques using this scrap board, let's just try that with a preheater. I've done this before with a preheater, so I'll actually link the video to this video, save doing that again today. We're really here to salvage stuff, but you can see that these sort of boards are very, very useful for learning your soldering and desoldering techniques. Now, what do I actually want from this board? Well, that is probably an EEPROM or BIOS chip, so we'll have that one. I'll see if I can unsolder some of these tantalum type capacitors. They're quite handy to have, and some of the MOSFETs, and maybe some of the inductors as well on this one. Okay, we have some large capacitors around here. I'll see if I can get these off first, because these have a nasty tendency of exploding if you're using hot air close to them. Okay, actually these are the surface mount type, and these are really quite tricky to unsolder, especially to get them off of one piece. We can see technique with these is heat up the pad at one side and then try and bend the thing back a little bit. Doesn't always work very well. Get a little bit of solder on there. Okay, because these are tricky, I don't tend to unsolder these for salvage purposes. Sometimes I'll try and get them off the board to stop them exploding. Okay, you can see I'm lifting them up though. Yeah, you see that's coming loose. Yeah. This one's going to be tricky because the connector's in the way. Let's have a go. Can we get at it? Yeah, we can. So this is the technique I use if you want to try and get them off in one piece. Okay, they're off. Let's just get the others, then let's see how well it worked. So they all came off. Okay, 180 microfarad, 16 volt. They all look pretty good. Yeah. But that one broke. So look, I broke 1 out of 6, okay? Also, that trashed the board here as well. I mean, you can stick it back down, but it did damage the board. So you don't want to be using this technique on the board that you're trying to repair. Your other option is to use hot air, but I say they may just explode. Now they're out of the way, getting the inductors off, these surface mount ones are easier than the through hole. These tantalum capacitors, the MOSFETs, these should come off fairly easily. And I'll take these because they're quite useful things. Let's see if I get the capacitors off first. But once I get this area warm, it'll all kind of come off together really. I have the other scrap one of these. These are something like GTX 780s or something like that. The old boards, they are scrap. These are the boards I originally used. I got them as faulty anyway, and I used these when I was learning how to do VGA rework basically. So they served a useful purpose, and now they can be some spare parts. As I mentioned, if I was repairing graphics cards of this type, I would keep these as donors, but I'm not. Having said that, MOSFETs and such like on here, I will find other graphics cards or items that would have the same, so useful. I'm going to try and unsolder the capacitors with hot air on this one. Let's see if it's easier than that technique I used previously, and let's see if any of them actually explode. So I have this entire area of the board warm without putting heat directly onto those capacitors. Let's see if they'll come off. This is always a bit iffy doing this, guys. It's off. 2. Let's see if we can get 6 out of 6, because I only got 5 out of 6 using the other technique, okay? 3. I'm trying to keep the heat away from being directly on the capacitor. Can you see that? I'm also trying to heat the board next to it. Yeah. Six. Okay, we'll look at them afterwards. Let's get the last of the MOSFETs off this one and the inductor. What do we have from those two graphics cards? So we have a load of these 220 microfarad tantalum capacitors. Yeah, really quite handy things, those. We've also got some, I'm pretty sure these are diodes. We can test them and see. That one might be a capacitor, actually that's different, could be a diode. Another one there. Let's have a quick look. So what are these things? Those are quite probably diodes, 5483, maybe a 1M5483. Okay. What are you? Well, you don't conduct that way. But if it's a diode, that'd be the wrong way around anyway. Let's go the other way on one. Yeah, they're like Schottky diodes, actually. 0.190, okay. Useful things, I'm sure. Those other ones, the ones that had a different number on these ones. What are these? We'll put the red lead on here. They read even lower. 0.098. What about the other way around? They're very small guys, they're flirting around a little bit. Let's hold that in something so we can measure it more easily. Well, I have it clipped in here, so this actually should be now connected to one of the terminals, I think. Meter's working. Let's have a look. Yeah, that reads 0.092. And this way round, is open. So that's like a Schottky diode, but extremely low forward voltage drop. Useful component, probably. I also have some smaller value tantalum capacitors. I made a video about these codes, how to recognize them. If I remember, I will link it from this one. Okay. These things are MOSFET drivers. Okay. Then I have a load of MOSFETs, so 4835N. Are they all the same? So we have some 4841N and 4835N. So the two types there. So again, I'll put those in a little bag together as I will with the diodes and the tantalums. It's easier to sort later. One, I think, is an, oops. Oh, 25L1005. So that's another EEPROM. I have a couple of these MOSFETs again. I unsoldered all 6 of these. You saw me do it. So now in total I have 11 of these. It was probably easier that way, but more risky in my opinion. The base plastics were a bit melty, but that's not really an issue. Then I have quite a few of these inductors and these useful things. 1R0. I have some of these, whatever these are. They look like inductors again to me. Yeah, I'd say they're inductors. And a couple more. 1R0 again. So we have some inductors. Always keep some of these, and I think these are worth salvaging. And that's basically quite a few parts just from those 2 old graphics cards. I have one more scrap motherboard. Again, minus a PCH on this one. This is probably another one I use for practice to make videos. Yeah, one of the connectors already unsoldered on this one. I have a nice twin USB 3 there. Again, some MOSFETs around these capacitors. BIOS chip, EEPROM, that can come off. Let's see if we can unsolder some of these. These are quite useful because they get broken. Let's see how easy they are to unsolder. So the way to do this is going to be from behind and then try to pull them out of the board. That's going to be a bit awkward getting hold of them, but how are we going to do it? Let's see. Maybe if I can wrap a bit of wire or something around that. Maybe I'm trying to think of where I can get hold of this and pull it out. We could try holding the board this way in a small vise. That actually might be the easiest way to do this. So let's even just clamp this into something and then see if we can get some of these off without melting the plastic. So to do this, I'm going to just heat this side of the board. This is where the connectors are. I'm going to use my tweezers, grab them from the other side and just pull them off the board, basically. Let's see if this actually works. It'll take a while to get up to temperature, of course. I may also be better using these actually to get hold of them. Yeah, I can get a better grip that way. Okay, let's see if this actually works. I have tried this before and usually the pins pull out of the plastic. It's not easy to unsolder these things. I've never looked at that. I can probably buy them, but we will see. This may work better with a bit of flux. It won't do any harm, that's for sure. Actually, you can also try adding some leaded solder as well. That may help. Just because this reduces the melting point, basically. Try to get a nice blob of solder floating around here. Well, it's coming. It's out. I'm not sure how successful it is out. That one just fell out. We have a good one. This is another one of the light grey ones. Another one. That came out well, to be honest. Yeah, just this one that didn't work very well. Some of the pins have pulled out. So 3 out of 4. That's not bad, I think, for that technique. Okay. And I also have another stash of scrap graphics cards, basically. Okay. Some old things, these. Yeah. Another one of those in actual fact. So these are all scrap. I'll keep these on one side because I'm going to investigate another method of doing this. Probably next week. I have some new equipment coming. That's something I've not tried before. So we'll keep these on one side for that. I bet you're wondering now, aren't you, what I have coming? Feel free to guess, but I will neither confirm or deny, okay? It's a secret. And I have another stash of stuff still in the box. So there's a whole variety of things in here, to be quite honest. That is just a heatsink of a card, yeah. Whole stash of things. I think there's some old TV main boards in here, some power supplies, some old lighting equipment, and who knows what else might be in the bottom of here. Yeah, this is mainly through hole stuff. There's a bit of surface mount. So let's continue on the next video, maybe in a day or two actually, and let's have a look at the techniques we can best use to salvage from this stuff and what we might find useful on it. But I hope you found this video interesting and useful, some idea of what we can get from old motherboards and graphics cards, what we might find that is just useful as general purpose electronic components, and how to unsolder things like connectors safely. Okay, Look forward to seeing you all again soon on Learning Electronics Repair. Ciao for now, guys.